everyone, this is Brittany Kelly with the South Carolina Emergency and Management Division. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks Chris for the QA. I'm also having a little bit of trouble with sound, so I probably won't be able to hear anyone that unmutes, but if you want to throw anything in the chat box along the way, please feel free to. All right, like I said, my name is Brittany Kelly. I'm the Public Assistance Program Manager here at South Carolina Emergency Management Division, and I was asked to speak today, I guess, to go over a little bit about eligibility related to the Public Assistance FEMA Grant Program. I tried to tailor this as much as I can, specifically to the Boards of Disabilities and the Department of Disabilities and Special Needs. But if you have specific questions, again, please feel free to throw them in the chat box. Stop me at any point. We can open up for additional questions at the end, because I'm definitely here to try and tailor this to you all and what you need to get out of this. I know some of this is going to be something similar to what many of you have seen in the applicants briefings prior. I did take some of the information out that I just didn't think we needed to rehash at this time, and tried to kind of narrow in on some areas that we have had discussions previously with, again, boards of disabilities across South Carolina. So the big thing that always matters when we talk about public assistance is the eligibility pyramid, right? So starting at the applicant level, who are eligible applicants to apply for the Public Assistance Grant Program? Well, state agencies, counties, cities, other local governments and municipalities, political subdivisions of the state, which some of you are. We have one federally recognized tribe in the state of South Carolina, which is the Catawba Nation, and certain PNP organizations that provide critical or essential services. And it's, from my understanding, kind of across the state, different county disability boards are structured differently. Some are PNPs, some are established by the county as a county government, and some are established as a political subdivision. And this will really matter as we get further into eligibility. So backing up really quickly, to submit an RPA, a request for public assistance, for a county or a political subdivision, because they are considered a type of government, it's very straightforward. They just have to submit that request for public assistance. However, moving into the PMPs, those private nonprofits with critical services,
Hey, Brittany.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. It looks like everyone got muted, but we should be good now. So some of you are private nonprofits with critical services.
That's better.
And as such, you should be able to apply for public assistance if your critical services falling under medical. Does everyone not have sound? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. So if you're eligible for the Public Assistance Grant Program, you would submit an RPA, a request for public assistance. And how do you do that? You do that in the grants portal system. That's that grantee.fema.gov website. And it must be submitted within 30 days of the designated declaration. The severe storms had just passed, that's why it's in here as a recent example. So since it was declared on May 1st, then the deadline for submitting an RPA for that disaster was May 31st. You do have to have your DUNS number. It should be unique to you. This has been an area that sometimes the DUNS number may be used in if you have multiple entity types under you, maybe part of your entity operates as a 501c3 PMP and part of it is a county government or a special purpose district. Make sure you're using the DUNS number that lines up with the name you're applying under, because FEMA will check this against the Secretary of State's website. And just so you're aware, for COVID-19, if you're looking to apply for COVID-19, the they did waive the RPA 30-day requirement from the date of declaration. As the incident period is ongoing, the RPA application period is also currently ongoing. However, if you are a PMP, when you go to submit that RPA, again, if you're a county government or special purpose district, very straightforward, you request public assistance, and you state that whether or not you participated in a PDA, a preliminary damage assessment. If you're a PMP, you do have to provide additional documentation, and so that's why it's very important to be aware of how you are legally established. If you're a PMP, you do have to provide also a current ruling letter from the IRS, substantiation of that you own an eligible facility or you operate. So if you do not own it, the lease agreement, the rent agreement, etc. The services that you provide that substantiate that you do eligible work. And there is more information in the PAPPG, that's the Public Assistance Policy Guide, if you need additional information on do you fall under that. Again, not really a concern when it comes to the county boards. We are aware that you have eligible facilities as well as perform certain types of eligible work. So what's an eligible facility? Again, it's pretty straightforward here. To own or operate an eligible facility related to the public assistance program, it must be damaged as a result of the declared disaster for permanent work. If you're just looking to claim sheltering or evacuation costs, again, it wouldn't be damaged, but it would be within a declared area. So if Charleston County was declared for a hurricane, then it would be eligible, but if your facility is in Beaufort and it was not declared, then you could not claim for reimbursement. You have to have legal responsibility, and it must be used in the time of the disaster and not under another federal agency authority. So eligible work is, I think, the big thing that many of you have questions on, and it's completely understandable as we've continued to navigate eligibility related to the boards of disabilities. Very high level, it really is broken out into two types of work: emergency work, which is your category A and B, and then permanent work, categories C through G, depending on, again, the type of claims you're making. And here's kind of that further breakout. I think the big thing that we have conversations on is related to category B, emergency protective measures. And the two conversations I think we've continued to have with many of the boards of disabilities has been evacuation and sheltering. I'm aware that this is not an all-inclusive list, and there are many things that are currently excluded in this, but I just wanted to make sure we had a couple conversations on this, because this is an area that I think you guys have all had some type of conversation with FEMA, and sometimes FEMA has not been consistent in their interpretation of eligibility here. So the first thing I want to cover is evacuation. Evacuation is very clear on page 119 of the PAPPG. Again, that's a Public Assistance Policy Program Policy Guide, that evacuation is eligible. You just have to have the legal responsibility for the folks who are evacuating, which you do. And FEMA's been pretty consistent on their eligibility calls related to evacuation costs that you all have incurred. And those activities include transportation, mobilization, and food, and water and route are the big things that I think you all see. I have seen some projects where FEMA tried to deny food and water, but it's specific to the feeding and providing water, drinks for the en route, not at point A and not at point B, but the in between. So just so you're aware, you will have to be able to break that out. Mobilization is eligible. So if you were to go ahead and mobilize buses in anticipation of a threat, say like we just experienced for EOC, where we weren't sure if we were going to have to evacuate, if we were to have received a declaration for EOC, which we did not, but if we were to have, and you only mobilized the buses or ordered or brought them on contract and got them to your facility in anticipation of, even if you did not evacuate, the cost for mobilization would be eligible for reimbursement if your county was declared. And then transportation, and then transporting back to your facility after the threat has left or the event has happened is also eligible. The area that has had a lot of conversation around it across the state has been sheltering. So let's jump over to that for a minute. The big thing first, when it comes to any type of eligible work, as we discussed, it must be the legal responsibility of the applicant, and sheltering is no different. What is different specific to South Carolina is that counties and state agencies have the legal responsibility for congregate sheltering activities in natural disasters. And man, is that a loaded sentence. The first part is legal responsibility for congregate sheltering. So many of you have established non-congregate sheltering agreements if you had to evacuate. As in, you're bringing them to your own area, not an area designated by the county. That's not necessarily not eligible, but it is if you don't follow the correct steps. And let me just check. It's not in here. I will have to provide that to Rob afterwards to send out for eligibility and non-congregate sheltering, as well as where you can find it in the Public Assistance Policy Guide. But the big part, if you are interested in providing non-congregate sheltering, is you have to ask for it in order to be eligible for it, because we have to get approval from FEMA. Now, specific to this hurricane season, so now through December 31st, FEMA has waived the requirement to ask for non-congregate sheltering waivers. They're just giving it to us for the first 30 days from when we start incurring costs. However, you do have to report your numbers for how many people you have in non-congregate sheltering, where they are at, and the costs incurred to date to the state, to me, weekly, every Monday, while you have them in non-congregate sheltering. So that's right now if you have anyone in non-congregate sheltering for COVID, and it does bleed into hurricane season for 2020. So if you have anyone that you would have to provide non-congregate sheltering for a potential natural disaster, that would fall into that, like a hurricane. But it's really important to see that congregate part, because that's huge, especially when we've had many conversations with FEMA related to your entities that you may have provided in FEMA's definition non-congregate sheltering. So again, I apologize for not having the slide, but I will provide that to Rob McBurney so he can be able to send out that information related to how to request that if you ever need to. The other part of this is specific to natural disasters. So that is, again, if we have another pandemic, we would have to get waivers in order to, this is specific to natural disasters. So when it comes to pandemics like COVID-19, the counties do not have legal responsibility for sheltering. So that's been something we've been working out because we had never really experienced that before. But the big part here is there is state law that states that counties have the legal responsibility for congregate sheltering in natural disasters. And that is something that I think has been a topic of discussion in the most recent events since FEMA has taken that stance on eligibility. So what does that mean for you all? Well, it is my understanding, again, based on my experience in working with many of you, that again, we have three types of applicants out there, right? We have PNPs, we have special districts, and we have county entities. So if you are legally established as a county entity, you should be able to claim sheltering costs incurred because you are legally responsible. If you are a private nonprofit, you are not legally responsible in FEMA's position related to sheltering, even though you're doing exactly what you need to do to protect, people and property. So there's two ways to look at that. First would be to have a conversation with DHEC, who is in charge of medical and special needs sheltering, to maybe coordinate with them and their plans, or to talk to your county emergency manager to see exactly what is in your county sheltering plan, to see if maybe you can join, you can be part of that conversation to see how best that you can work together to support your entity and the county's plan. And it may be that through that coordination, you're able to essentially bill the county for those sheltering costs, and they reimburse you because they could claim those costs on their FEMA project. Special districts, service districts that some of you do fall under, that is also should be fine as long as it's specific to a county. And I'm happy if you would like to reach out to me to have that conversation to see how we can best make sure that your costs incurred are eligible. But I am aware that this has continued to be a sore spot for many of you, and we are continuing to get it as clear as we can. However, many times it has been clear as mud. Finally, we're just going to talk about public assistance eligibility related to costs. So again, you have to be an eligible applicant, have an eligible facility, have eligible work before we can ever have a conversation about cost. For costs to be eligible, they have to be directly tied to the performance of work, adequately documented, reduced by applicable credits, including insurance and salvage value. Just to get a question related to DHEC says special needs shelters are only for people with special medical needs, such as vents, respirators, dialysis, not our special needs population. That's very interesting. One of the things that we can do is we can have a conversation with Rob Burris with DSS, who is the ESF 6 lead for mass care, and see if maybe we need to reopen up that conversation on a larger scale if that is DHEC's position. So going back to eligible costs, the big things here is you have to be able to directly tie it to your eligible cost or your eligible activities. So certain things that you might feel that you need to purchase or activities that you need to do in order to be to take care of your people and your stuff, FEMA might say that that was an option, not required. And the big thing with emergency protective measures, it's what's required to reduce or eliminate the immediate threat. So same thing with necessary and reasonable to accomplish the work properly and efficiently. Do you need to rent or order 6 limo buses, or would school buses work? Those are the types of things that FEMA looks at when it comes to establishing cost reasonableness. Also, specific to Category B emergency protective measures, only overtime for your staff are eligible, and it does have to be consistent with your internal policies related to pay. So if you were looking to potentially seek reimbursement for staff overtime, you would have to be able to say, yes, our normal pay period is 40 hours within 7 days, and this staff person worked 60 hours, and it's directly tied to them supporting eligible activities, whether it's evacuation, sheltering, cleaning. I do know this has been an area of concern as well, specific to FEMA's position that sometimes it might be increased operating costs, not necessarily directly tied to the performance of eligible work for the natural disaster. So if you ever have questions like that, please feel free to reach out to me or my team, and we can try and navigate that eligibility so we can provide the clearest message to FEMA that supports your eligibility. Because again, this is another federal grant, it is important that you look at the 2 CFR 200 requirements related to anything that you're looking for procurement. That could be procurement for the buses, for food, for additional medical equipment, anything that you are potentially looking to purchase. Just make sure it is in line with that minimum 2 CFR 200 procurement standards. So if again, we've gotten to this point and you're like, yep, through a specific event, you have an eligible project, it looks like, then we break things out into large or small projects. The big thing is you have to have, for this federal fiscal year, which will change on October 1, so these numbers will change. They change every fiscal year for FEMA, is the small and large project thresholds. You have to have enough costs incurred to meet at least the small project threshold to be eligible for reimbursement. Currently, that is $3,300. It'll probably go up between $50 to $100 come October 1. That's usually what we see on average. The nice thing about small projects, that's if you're under the 131.1 currently at this time, is that it's usually obligated on estimates, and you receive all the money the second it's obligated. It's obligated to you. If it turns out that it was obligated for $100,000, but you only spent $80,000, that's great. You keep the extra $20,000. If it was obligated for $100,000 and it ended up being $120,000, well, then you have to eat the delta. So it's really important with small projects that you get as close to your estimate as possible of what you anticipate you spent in order to substantiate eligible costs and make sure that you made yourself whole related to that 75-25 split. For large projects, however, they are obligated on actuals, not estimates. So even if your project was obligated for $150,000, but it cost you $175,000 and you have the documentation to substantiate it, then when you go to request reimbursement, you'll receive every single penny that was eligible that were costs incurred. So that's the big thing between small and large. Is small, the second it's obligated, we cut you a check, you're good to go. We don't care about the delta as long as you did the work. For large projects, the second it's obligated, you reach out to EMD to request reimbursement. You provide all your documentation to substantiate eligibility, and then you are reimbursed based on actual eligible costs incurred. This just kind of speaks to that large project process that, again, you're going to go through SC recovery grants to draw down that money related to large projects. Okay, question. The overtime costs that were denied to many coastal providers was clearly an interpretation of the immediate threat and safety and an evacuation only. So sheltering OT was denied because they were no longer assumed to be in harm's way, even though we had to leave for a week or more. Can you explain how things have changed? To be honest, not completely. I was completely against local FEMA's position related to eligibility of overtime, and that's why I've strongly supported some of the appeals. And I'm very interested to see how Region 4 addresses those appeals, and if it needs to be second appealed, how headquarters addresses those appeals. I think FEMA was definitely looking to be consistent on their eligibility related to sheltering for boards of disabilities, and they did not take into account the 3 applicant types that are applied across the state, depending on how the counties have established their boards of disabilities. And as such, the FEMA did not make the best decisions on some of that, is kind of my current position. So I wish I could give you, I know that's clear as mud, but that is Brittany Kelly's opinion and position and how I've kind of implemented, and I have strongly supported the boards related to the sheltering being considered overtime. Hopefully I'll have more clarity soon once those appeals are adjudicated. So when it comes to PA resources, the big things that have changed is first the PA, I don't know if you see that up there, the 2020 Papa G V4. So we did receive about a month and a half ago a new public assistance policy guide, and that will be what is what guides us and is the overall document that we are going to lean on for policy related to this hurricane season and moving forward. The most recent Papa G that is published before an event is what is the guiding document of that event. So that is very important to be aware of. And there were some changes in the new Papa G. I think that the most surprising change, and again, this affects you all because mainly you all look at Category B projects, is you will have 90 days from the recovery scoping meeting, that RSN meeting that you have with FEMA, to provide all documentation for eligible costs incurred to be considered. If it is after 90 days, FEMA has a right to deny it. And that I was very surprised with. I understand it's FEMA's way of speeding up the recovery process, but I think it is going to impede some operations. And so we will see how it goes and then provide FEMA the feedback accordingly. As I said earlier, if you're an eligible applicant, you're looking to apply for public assistance, like I said, you'll use FEMA's grants portal. You will continue to use FEMA's grants portal for requesting public assistance, monitoring your project, all the way through the obligation of your project. That means you signed it, you're good to go. Once the funds are obligated, you will switch over to the SC Recovery Grants Management System. That's screcoverygrants.org. That's where you draw down your funds. It's where you submit your quarterly reports, request closeout of your project, and just it's really just EMD's project management system for your projects. So that's what Grants Portal looks like. And that's kind of everything I had just said related to SC recovery grants. Just quickly going over, again, many of you, especially on the coast, are way too familiar with FEMA programs, but this is just the high level of what things usually look like. We have a potential event. We look at the PDAs, that's that raw damage assessment information. We validate with FEMA if we think we're going to meet the state threshold. And then we work with the governor to submit a request and hopefully receive a declaration from the president. Once we do that, initiates FEMA programs. Many of you, again, very familiar with applicants' briefings, and then you submit your request for public assistance if needed, and then we start the FEMA process. Right there, in third one down in the middle, you see recovery scoping meeting. Again, that's crucial. You have 90 days to submit all of your documentation related to emergency work projects or work complete projects in order to be eligible for reimbursement with the new change in the PAPA-J. And next thing is questions, but I'm actually going to stay on this page so that you all have my information. Again, my name is Brittany Kelly. If anyone wants to unmute and ask questions, I'm happy to see if we can hear anyone, or you're more than welcome to use the chat box. I try not to take up too many people's time. I know that your time is valuable. You have a lot going on. If any of you are eligible for CARES Act funding, and you're currently navigating your CARES Act application, I'm happy to entertain any of those questions as well. I'm not in charge of CARES Act, but the Department of Administration, who is administering CARES Act, is asking that you submit your PA project first, or anything that's eligible for PA through PA, or they will kick back those applications that are PA eligible and ask you to submit it through. And the reason is they are providing for counties, state agencies, and local governments and special purpose districts. They are providing the non-federal share to your PA projects. So in a way to expand on and diversify the funds related to the coronavirus, COVID-19, they are trying to say, hey, submit this to PA if you can. If it's not eligible for PA, we'll take it, as long as it falls in their eligibility as well. And that's all I have, pending any questions.
Yeah. If everybody can type in your questions on the chat box, so we'll have a record of the questions as well.
If we receive CARES fund through the emergency fund and shelter, are we still eligible for CARES fund under your program? So the CRF funding through CARES at the Department of Administration is eligible, or is implementing and managing. If you receive reimbursement for activities or costs incurred from them, you cannot apply for the same costs incurred for our program. However, if you have different costs, you can submit them. So essentially, I'm trying to think of a great example. Great example is testing. Actually, PPE. We'll go with PPE because that's, I think, a big one that everyone's hearing that's eligible for both programs. If you are providing PPE to nurses, physicians, first responders, anyone who is directly responding to COVID-19 positive patients, that PPE you are going to submit to the Public Assistance Grant Program. If you are purchasing PPE because of COVID-19, but not in response to COVID-19, so that's maybe for your employees, your patients, certain personnel that may be coming to offices, that's going to go through CARES Act, because CARES Act is able to provide reimbursement for items related because of COVID-19, but not in response to COVID-19. Are for-profit providers for DDSN eligible for assistance? For public assistance, no. Only state, local governments, county governments, special purpose districts, and PMP. That is Chris, that is my understanding as well. It is very similar eligibility related to public assistance. They just have a broader scope related to materials and activities. They can provide reimbursement because items that or activities that are because of COVID-19. We only can provide reimbursement to activities and costs related to response in COVID-19.
Okay, thank you for the questions. If you don't have any more questions, we will go ahead and wrap it up. We do want to let you know that in which rep was it?
Yeah, the public assistance program and policy guide that Brittany referenced during the presentation was actually distributed.
Okay, I'll stay on another 5 minutes as people want to type anything or anything else that comes up, or as long as if questions last more than 5 minutes, I'll stay on as long as we need to, but I'll stay in silence for up to 5 minutes. And I am aware that I have a due out to provide the non-congregate sheltering information to Rob to also send out, since I did not include that on this roll-up.
The public assistance program and policy guide that was effective June 1st, 2020 was actually, there was a link in situation report number 23 that we published on June 3rd. That document is on our website. If you click on the coronavirus banner, when you access bdsn.sc.gov and go to the June 3rd situation report, and you will find the public assistance program and policy guide that Brittany referenced during the presentation. And we can also attach it to, we already sent the slide deck out, but if anybody, like I said, can't find it, feel free to email Rob and he'll direct you to where that document's located.
Liz is- Okay, I want to thank everybody for participating here today. We hope you found this helpful. Like I said, if you have any other questions, give me a call or you can contact Brittany.
Find a
With
copy of
questions.
these slides? Where can we find a copy of the slides?
They should be attached to your presentation, but if you want to email the EOC, we'll get it to you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
But you should find them. They should be attached for everybody to the slide to the Skype meeting.
Yeah, I don't see them.
Okay, we will get it to you. We'll get it to you. Just send me an email at EOC.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I think I can attach it to.
Okay, so we just want to thank everybody for participating. Like I said, if you have any other questions, you can contact Brittany and contact me as well, and
Yes, I am aware
question.
that for the non-congregate sheltering versus congregate sheltering are not in the presentation, and I will make sure that I provide that to Rob.
Okay, it should be added to the presentation right now, so you can get the slides. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you to Brittany for giving us this great information. And like I said, if you have any other questions, contact us and let us know. We're going to try to, if this is a good time and day and time to do these presentations, we're going to try to go ahead and have some more of these on Friday afternoons going forward. So we're signing off for the EOC. Just thanks to Brittany and thanks to everybody who participated.